Welcome to my channel. In this CodeSignal session, we're going to be talking about making a consecutive array. There is a bit of more detail to this. I'm going to talk about that. But before I do that, if you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel, leave your questions in the comments area, hit the like button. I am more than happy to help you. Let's get this one going. Before I start, I've got my Jupyter Lab on the right side of my screen, and I've got the CodeSignal on the left side. Let's click on the task and see what it is about. Let me just expand this task area. Ratiorg got statues of different sizes as a present from Codemaster for his birthday. Each statue having a non-negative integer size. Since he likes to make things perfect, he wants to arrange them from smallest to largest. This is a hint. We will need to sort things out so that each statue will be bigger than the previous one, exactly by one. So if you've got statues of size 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, you will have to sort them as 2, 2, 3, 3, and 4. He may need some additional statues to be able to accomplish that. Help him figure out the minimum number of additional statues needed. So, for example, if 6, 2, 3, and 8 are the size of the statues that the Codemaster has given this person, they will want to, sort them from 6, 2, 3, 8 to 2, 3, 6, 8. That's step number 1. And then they will need to figure out how many missing statues from a size perspective are there. For example, if you've got 2, 3, 6, 8, you're missing 4, 5, and 7 to make it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So let me do that. I'll quickly type that one in. Statues equals 6, 2, 3, 8. Those are the statues. And then I will need to write some code that figures out there is 4, 5, and 7 missing in that range. But as I told you, first let's sort it, because then we can start finding out which is missing. In order for us to sort this, I'm going to use the same name. I will use the sorted function onto a list, which is the statues one. And if I print the statues after I have sorted them, you will see that now I've got 2, 3, 6, 8, which is great. Think about a human brain. How do we as humans think about this? Well, I would look at that and say, I've got 2, then I've got 3, then I've got 6. Okay, there is some gap. How do I figure that gap out, and how do I put it in numbers? Well, you need to first find that gap. So let's write a comment, find the gap. After you find it, you will need to say measure the gap. So I will find a gap. Once I have done that, I will measure how big it is. And then 3 will be add to the previous gaps. What does that mean? So if you look at this, between 2 and 3, there's no gap. That's fine. Between 3 and 6, there is a gap. That's step number 1. Step number 2, how big is the gap? Well, 6 minus 3 equals 3, but the gap is only 2. So think about that. I will have to say 6 minus 3 minus 1 to get 2. So I've got 2 gaps here between 3 and 6. Keep that in mind. And then between 6 and 8, how big is the gap? 8 minus 6 equals 2, but it's not correct. The gap is only 1. So 8 minus 6 minus 1 is 1. I already had 2 gaps. There is a new one now. I've got 3 gaps. The answer should be 3. So I will follow the same logic, and I will try to do whatever my brain is telling me to do. So I need to iterate over those numbers. So to take 2 and 3, 3 and 6, 6 and 8, I need a for loop. If you haven't seen my video on for loops, the link is up the top right. Let's write a for loop. For I in range of length of statues minus 1. I take that minus 1 because when I go to 6 and 8, and then the next one will be 8 and outside, I don't want to go there. There is no number after 8. I want to stop there. So for I in range of length of statues minus 1, I don't want to jump outside of that loop. I need to calculate the difference. I was talking about the gap. So let's say gap equals statues in I plus 1. So when I'm looking at this list, I want to find a gap between 3 and 2. Not 2 and 3. I want to find between 3 and 2. So I will take index I plus 1 and index I. So 3 and 2. Once I've identified a gap, if gap is greater than 1, which means that it's a way for me to understand if the gap is between 2 and 3 or 2 and 4. Therefore, I can find, hey, there's a missing statue here. So if the gap is greater than 1, What I want to do is to add that gap to a container that I've been collecting. So do I have a container to collect? Not really. Let me make a container first. I will call it gap collector. And the gap collector in the very first instance doesn't have anything. I'll start with 0. I'm assuming there are no missing statues. And when I go down, I'll start saying, okay, there is 1 gap, there's 2 gaps, there are 3. So I've got a gap collector. If the gap is greater than 1, I want to add the gap to the gap collector. But if you remember, we need to calculate the gap minus 1. I gave this example earlier in the video. So gap collector equals gap collector from previous steps plus the gap minus 1. I want to reduce it by 1. Quickly, I can tell you that it means that the difference between 6 and 8 is 2, but the gap is only 1. That's why we're reducing it by 1. Okay, so by then I will have a gap collector that is actually populated with all the gaps. So if I look at gap collector, I will see, sorry, I need to run this one first because gap collector is not defined. I will see that the answer is 3, and that matches what exactly CodeSignal has. So I think I've kind of solved this problem. All I need to do is move my code into CodeSignal, run the test, and then submit it. But in any time during this video, if you feel that this is really working, hit that like button, post your questions in the comments, and subscribe to my channel. That makes me really happy. CodeSignal has already given me a function for me to fill in. If you haven't seen my video on functions, the link is up the top right. Let me just go ahead and bring in any relevant line of code. So I will be receiving a statues from the user. I will need to sort it, copy that one right here. Then I need the gap collector in my function. That's good. And all I need is the rest of the code. Let me paste that here. So just make sure you've got the indentation right, because this is a for loop. I want everything after it to start with 1 indentation at the front. Let me just extend this so that you can see it. And after if, I need an indentation, which is great. And I don't want to print the gap collector because this is a function. Let me just go forward. I want to return the gap collector. What I will do, I will run some tests to see if it's working. You can see that tests pass 5 out of 5. So that's a very good sign. Submit, and hopefully it will say correct. Thank you very much for watching my video, and stay tuned.